Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Hello everybody, today on the channel we are talking supercars. Now, love them or loathe them, I think if you were to ask just about any petrol head, they would at least like a go in something like this. My buddy Ant's Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera LP 570-4 Edizione Tecnica, which is a long name for what is a very simple car. Big engine, lightweight, 2 seats, go very fast. Now the thing is that I'm lucky enough to be used to driving stuff like this, and so getting into it is a fairly familiar process. But for everybody, there is always a first time, and there's a good chance that first time may come sometime before you actually own something like this. So if one day that magic opportunity arises to get behind the wheel of something like this, what exactly do you need to know? In this video, I'm going to talk you through 5 very basic points, which may perhaps seem obvious, but are things that you should not overlook if you want to make sure that you enjoy your first go of a supercar. Point number 1 is insurance. It may seem very obvious, but it is incredibly important. Are you insured to drive the car? Now, in many countries across the globe, the car is what is insured, and provided that you have the permission of the person who owns it, you are okay. In Britain, things work a little bit differently, and although some people have a policy a bit like that, where if you meet certain criteria, typically age, and you have the owner's permission, you are fully insured, for the most part, that's not how it works. And if you think you're okay because you have a fully comprehensive policy, you may not be as safe as you think. Because though many people believe a fully comp policy means you can drive anything, only for some people is that true, and typically that's only on a third-party basis. Which means that if you were to smash this car into somebody else's, it'll pay for the other car, but not this one. That is why I have a specific trade policy for all the filming that I do, because it means if the worst does ever happen, I am fully covered. And of course, there is no finer way to ruin a day than writing off a friend's car you can't afford to fix. And that's why insurance is point number 1. Second is safety. Just because somebody's driven a car to you doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good idea for you to drive it. And the main thing it comes to when I'm looking at supercars is tyres, because these cars often don't do many miles, and for some reason owners will happily spend thousands and thousands of pounds on exhausts, wraps, blingy carbon fibre interior and exterior, but not tyres. Now there are a couple of things that you want to check. Ignore really the brand. If it's one you've heard of, you'll probably be okay. First thing you want to check is the tread, and don't just look here and see if it's okay. These often wear in an unusual way, with the inner often going first. So get your hand all the way in there and check that you've got at least the legal minimum required, because if you were to drive a car with a tyre that isn't fit for the road, each one could cost you 3 points on your license. The other thing that you want to check, and what I always look at before driving a car like this, is the age of the tyre. Now you'll find it somewhere on the front of it. If you can't see it, check the other side. They should be matching, but aren't always. Check first, of course, that the brands are matching as well. That's a good start. But you'll find a date code, and it's a series of 4 numbers. Here, 4923. And what that means is these tyres were made in the 49th week of 2023. So they're nice and fresh. But if you see a tyre that's about 9 or 10 years old or older, do exercise some caution. I now have a policy where if anybody brings me a car with tyres older than 10 years, I just won't drive it. And that is because of experience. Tyres like that, they might look okay, they can be lethal. Third, fit and features. Make sure that you are happy with your driving position and become familiar with what you can and cannot see. Particularly in something like this, a Lamborghini, they are fairly extreme. And if you're not used to this kind of thing, it may come as a bit of a shock. So if need be, get your friend to help you work out where exactly the corners of the car are. And make sure you know where all the functions are that you may need out on the road. In this car, for example, I want to know where the lift button is. It's down here. And if you're looking for reverse, you'll not find it here with the other gearbox controls. Instead, it's over here for a reason that I've honestly never quite been able to work out. Now, this particular car is also fitted with a single clutch automated manual gearbox, which is worth a video in of itself. Ant's actually made one talking about why he loves these. It's a box that not a lot of people like. And if you are lucky enough to drive a manual Gallardo, just get familiar with things like the clutch travel before you go onto the road. If you can, get yourself in a car park like this, just move it backwards and forwards a little bit. Just pretend you're on your first day of driving lessons and hopefully everything will go okay. And then, of course, when you are ready, that is the time to head out. And here we are, out on the glorious open road behind the wheel of Ant's fantastic Lamborghini. And this really is supercar through and through. And even in the context of other supercars, like your Ferrari 458s, your McLaren 650s, 720s and 570s, this is a bit of a wild child. It may have all-wheel drive, but it still requires a lot of respect. This is a supercar of the old school. But of course, that's not to say you can't enjoy it and have a little bit of fun at the same time. And this is what brings us on to point number 4, which is aggression. Now, regardless of whether you've driven something that is, or maybe you think is as fast as this, a hotted up Golf, perhaps a modern day EV, these cars will deliver their power in a very different way. Even though the Gallardo might feel and look like a fairly modern affair, it's not. It's got incredible punch, that highly divisive E-gear single clutch automated box, which I will be doing a whole video on at some point in the future. I know Ant also did one where he talked about how much he loves this, and others too, like our good friend Ben from Dad Cars. But if you want a quick summary of how to drive a car with this kind of gearbox, at low speeds, lift off a little as you are changing gear, and then at higher speeds, just keep your foot in. Now, these are not hard and fast rules for all cars with this kind of gearbox, but as a general guide, it's a pretty good starting point. I would recommend, if you are in a car like this, to put it in manual mode, because that will give you, if nothing else, the most control. And then, as you can see there, you can have a nice smooth gear shift, or if you want it, a pretty invigorating one. And when I talk about aggression, that does mean a couple of things. First off, if you're out and about in the middle of town, don't rev the thing up. Nobody is going to be impressed. I see it all the time, particularly in places like London. People revving up their supercar, and honestly, all you do is give the rest of us a bad name. If you want to hear the noises it makes, that's fine. Come somewhere like here, where there's nobody around and you can enjoy it. Wow! And the other side of aggression means ramp up your speed very, very progressively. Do not simply hop in the car and stamp your foot down. First off, it might be cold, and that would be mechanically unsympathetic. Secondly, even though this does have traction control, you shouldn't rely upon it. The way I look at cars when I drive them is if the traction light has come on and I wasn't deliberately testing it, then I, as a driver, have failed. Because it means, quite simply, I was asking the machine to do something that it didn't want to. And this then leads us neatly and succinctly into our final point, number 5, and that's time, which means simply take yours. Do not rush, do not feel stressed, do not feel pressured if it just doesn't feel right. If you're told, yeah, you can have a quick go, but it's going to be 2 or 3 minutes, you might feel obliged to put your foot down in a situation where you don't feel comfortable, and that is only ever going to end one way. So if that's the case, say thank you, but no thank you. Just don't do it. However, if the time is right, make sure that you're not in a rush. You haven't got to suddenly be anywhere, and so you can wait. Get familiar with the machine and the road if you don't know it, to make sure that when you do want to open the taps and have a bit of fun, you can do so safely and responsibly. And this is fundamentally important because, first off, binning somebody's supercar is a rubbish day, but secondly, if you do treat the car with respect but a dose of enthusiasm, and you return it in at least as good a condition as you were given it, then you're all the more likely to be given another go. And if that happens, it means you have done your job. You have driven your first supercar, been sensible, and enjoyed it. If you keep doing it, maybe they'll change up to something else, and you'll get to have a go of that as well. And then maybe one day, drive your own car, apply the same principles, and pass it forward. Let somebody else have a go of your pride and joy, because that is how we like to share the love. So, there we have it. 5 basic principles, which you can remember easily. It's JayEmm's ISFAT. Oh, come on. See you for the next one. Bye-bye.